analysis. So I will go back to those particles that the instrument flagged, and I will examine them. So I will look at their shape, and I'll see if that's consistent with gunshot residue, which would be something that is smooth or round in shape as the result of a high heat reaction. In addition to that, I will look at the chemical composition of those particles and make the determination for what type of particle it is that I am looking at.
And the automated process is performed by the SEM, right? The SEM for short.
Yes.
And what is it looking for? Those particles that we discussed earlier, or the compounds, the barium?
Yes. So basically, the way the SEM works is kind of based on brightness. So the more dense something is, the brighter it will appear. Because lead, barium, and antimony are heavy metals, gunshot residue-related particles will appear very bright. So it's scanning the samples based on brightness. And if it finds something above a certain brightness, that's when it will stop and collect a spectrum to determine what elements are in there. If there's lead, barium, or antimony, or any combination of those, that's when it will save where it's located and take a picture of that particle.
And would a demonstrative aid assist you in your testimony to the jury as far as what the SEM shows?
Yes.
Again, ladies and gentlemen, the witness is going to be using a visual or demonstrative aid to assist in explaining or illustrating her testimony. Just remember that the testimony of the witness is the evidence. However, this demonstrative aid is not to be considered by you as evidence in the case unless it's later received in evidence, and you should not use it as a substitute for evidence. Only items that are actually in evidence will go back with you to the jury room during your deliberations. You may proceed, counsel.
Thank you. And without getting into the actual results, we're just going to orient the jury to the chart that I have here, beginning with the top left.
Yes, so the top left is an image kind of showing where the particle is located on the sample, and that is taken at 400 times magnification.
And the top right?
That is now a closer up image of that particle taken at 3200 times magnification, where you can see clearly that it is bright, it is round in shape, and you kind of are able to visualize really the morphology of that particle.
And bottom left?
So that is what is called the EDS spectrum. Basically, it's just showing you what elements are present in that particle. So PB is lead, BA is barium, and SB is antimony. So you see peaks for all of those present in that particle. Therefore, it is a particle that contains lead, barium, and antimony, which makes it characteristic of gunshot residue.
And are the peaks that we see consistent with the amount of that compound within the sample?
Yes, overall, the height of the peaks relate to how much of that element is in the particle.
And finally, the bottom right.
So that is the image that the instrument takes during the automated analysis.
And did you receive a sample in this particular case for analysis?
Yes, I did.
Your Honor, approaching defense counsel has been previously marked the state's LLL for identification purposes. Your Honor, permission to approach the witness?
You may.
And if you need to handle anything biological, there are gloves right there, and the top has been open for ease of access. Tell me if you recognize it first, and if you need to open it, if you can just keep it outside the view of the jury.
I do recognize it.
And how is it that you recognize it?
This is one of the items that I received in this particular case.
And it was one sample, and what did that sample contain?
It contained a collection stub labeled as coming from the inside of a Jeep.
Okay, and is that in the same or substantially the same condition as the last time you saw it?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time, the state would move into evidence which is pre-marked the state's LLL as the next number exhibit.
No objection. Thank you. It'll be admitted. What's the next number?
60.
60 in evidence. Thank you.
57.
Looking for 57. One moment. I'm showing you what's been entered into evidence that states 57. Do you recognize that?
I do, yes.
And what is that?
This is a gunshot residue kit that we received in this case.
Okay. And did you analyze states 57?
Yes, I did.
And did you ultimately analyze state 60?
Yes, I did.
Okay. So, let me see. Grab your scissors. Go ahead and open the states 57. And I'm going to ask permission from the judge for you to step down.
You may.
If you want to open it, grab some gloves, and we'll
Okay.
go to the machine.
Just if you can publish states 57.
And the contents. So you received one sample, but there are 2 tubes.
Yes.
What are they representative of?
These were samples that we had received that are labeled as coming from the right hand and the left hand.
And who's the individual?
Cortland Henry.
And you can put those back in. And if you can publish states 60. And we have 1 tube, and what is that representative of?
It is labeled as coming from inside of a Jeep.
If you believe it, it will adjust. Thank you. You can put it back in and keep your seat. Okay, we're going to start with case 57. Did you ultimately have a chance to analyze and go through this SEM process, which is the automated process, and your individual process, in order to come up with an opinion as to the presence of GSR?
Yes.
And what was that opinion? And if you can specify both the left and then the right.
So the right hand of Cortland Henry contained 0 particles characteristic of gunshot residue and 2 two-component particles. And the left hand contained 1 particle characteristic of gunshot residue and 1 two-component particle.
Okay. And can you explain to us what that means?
Basically, overall, there was gunshot residue present on the hands.
Okay. And what affects the presence or absence of GSR on a person's hand or any object?
Sure. So if there is gunshot residue on someone's hands, that means that the individual got it on themselves by either discharging a firearm, being in the proximity of a firearm when it was discharged, or by coming into contact with a surface or object with gunshot residue on it.
And if we may go back to the demonstrative aid, what was this demonstrative aid? Was this representative of your results of Portland Henry?
Yes, that was the particle characteristic of gunshot residue that was on the left hand.
And the components, which you explained before, there are three kinds or three compounds that you were looking for, and which compounds were present in Portland Henry's left hand.
Lead, barium, and antimony were present in that particle.
So all three components.
Yes.
Okay, and let's move on to stage 60, which was the sample for the Jeep. What were your results? And again, did you also go through the SEM automated process and then your individual characteristic process?
I did, yes. So there were 0 particles characteristic of gunshot residue, but at least 9 2-component particles.
Okay, and what does that mean?
So, like I mentioned, 2-component particles can come from gunshot residue, but they also have other sources. So, because of that, these results are basically inconclusive. They could be gunshot residue, but they also could be from something else, and I can't say which it is.
Okay. In your analysis and reviewing the sample, did you find anything inconsistent with gunshot residue, if I'm phrasing that correctly?
Correct, and I did not. So overall, with 2-component particles, or any of the particles we look at, oftentimes if the particles are from another source, there are other elements or amounts of elements that would be unusual to find in gunshot residue. So, for example, one common source of 2-component particles is brake pads. Brake pads typically contain high amounts of the element iron. So if I'm doing my analysis and I come across particles